Hello, my name is Anais Alvarez. Thank you for watching episode 3, To Zoom or Not to Zoom. I would like to welcome today's guests, Benito Vasquez, Anthony Almandares, and Laura Moreno. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Anthony.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and start with you today, okay?
All right.
How was your experience with editing this video and throughout this whole process?
It was very long.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, we had about 11, 12 rehearsals. That's not including tech week. And then we had a bunch of meetings in between. So luckily I had Benito and Marissa and like the whole crew like help me out by trying to like look through the videos and just scour through them to see which parts would be usable and which sections they would like to see in the episodes. And then it was just a matter of compiling. So it was a lot of videos in a very short amount of time.
Okay. Wow. I can imagine that was very challenging. But was there even a rewarding experience throughout this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just getting to see the end product is very rewarding because you spend so much time watching these videos that you start to memorize certain sections, and then you start to be curious about how other people will react to moments that you find particularly exhilarating or just satisfying to watch, or the outcome of the entire experience itself, like to see the actors grow, to see the team get much more familiar with each other and much more comfortable with working with each other. And so there's also the aspect of learning to work through the process much faster. So you're not just figuring stuff out, you're actually getting stuff done.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And what about a big challenge?
The biggest challenge for me, and still to this day, is subtitles. I had a lot of trouble with subtitles, and I still don't know if it's my computer or it was just captions, but it's long. It's a long process, and I give a lot of credit to people who do subtitles because that is an art in itself. And so that was possibly the hardest part for me. Creating the credit scenes were particularly fun, but also hard because that's the last thing that the person will be left seeing. And then it's also providing so much information, so it has to be accurate. So there's always that double checking and making sure that the last thing that the audience or the viewers are left is a good impression.
Well, thank you. If you guys have any questions for Anthony, please post them on Facebook so we can go ahead and ask him. And now I'm going to move on to Laura and Benito. The forgotten art of assembly. Can you guys talk about the article and share how your thoughts, feelings towards it?
Look, if I can start, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
The reason this came up, Laura, is because I was inspired by one of the threads that you started about this article, and your reaction and your very articulate response, passionate response, and then the responses that followed. And so I'll let you discuss what your opinion was about the article. But one of the reasons that I found it interesting is because I found an entire second thread that was completely opposite, of different opinion. And ultimately what I came, reading everyone's opinion and how they felt, and really what it came down to me is, listening to each other, listening to each other in the sense that, why is it that some people feel they feel that need, or it does something for them to create, and so I felt like some were not listening to that part of it, and sort of only reacting to what sort of felt what fit in their sort of perspective, and so that just got me, for me, it just got me thinking, and we were in the middle of trying to figure out what is our next project and how how do we do we take part of this internet theater, and Zoom theater was sort of barely, that term was even barely sort of starting to come up, but really I took those responses and I took that sort of the discussion the interesting discussion that you started and ran with that idea. Like, let's look at these questions. Let's not only try to discover if there is theatricality through Zoom theater, but what does that process look like? Why do we feel the need to do this? Ask actors who are going through this, and so really that article and your conversation and your really was the precipice of all of this starting. And so it's one of the reasons I wanted to come on here and discuss it with you, because I wanted you to know how much you inspired me and inspired this project.
Thank you for that. I'll say, like, the first read through that article, I kind of felt the same way he did to a certain extent while reading it. Like, you were kind of like absorbed into it, and I was like, yes, that's right. And then I read it again, and I thought, this is not okay. And it started to break down, like, just his wording and the verbiage he used, and the fact that he didn't use just his own opinion, and say, Zoom theater isn't for me, the end. He went on to continue to try to convince the reader that they were not creating theater because you weren't assembling an audience. And I just kept thinking to myself, what he's doing is he's policing us. And I'm a really big person about not policing art, because it's different for everyone. And so I appreciate his perspective, because I feel as though having different perspectives and point of views is so very important in our industry. And there's value there. The problem that I had with him was when it started to feel as though he was policing the people that were choosing to create in this. And then also kind of policing people's grief. So what was happening is that, a lot of people had lost productions and money, and there was the fear of these theater companies, like, breaking down and never opening again. And so there was just so much loss at that time. I've got a monkey. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My goodness. There was so much loss at that time that everybody was grieving differently. And what happened is that it was almost as though, like, he was trying to tell people how to grieve through this process. And some people were like, I'm going to go and I'm going to create this Zoom content. Other people were like, I just really need to be by myself right now. Others were just like, I'm going to start baking bread. Whatever was going on, his article made me feel as though he was telling us not only how to create art and what theater art really was, but also how we were all supposed to grieve in this moment and how we were supposed to proceed. And so that alone just felt like it didn't rub me the right way. And then what I found out was that he wrote it under a pseudonym. And so that made me even more upset, was because we put ourselves out there. There's this honesty and this vulnerability when we create and when we give opinions. And this dude chose not to tell us who he really was, but wanted to kind of like create this movement or this division. And it was just so upsetting to me. And I had had a few conversations leading up to that article, which I think that's what just was like the tipping point, was because there was some older theater makers that had been doing the same kind of theater for a very long time that were telling the younger theater makers that what they were doing wasn't theater. And that was starting to get to me too, was because what they were doing was putting theater in a box. And although, yes, it does exist in black boxes, and in spaces, theater spaces, it doesn't have to. And I started going back into my research, and I was like, Greek theater was outside, and Roman theater was this. And I just kept thinking, like, what is the core of theater? And to me, it was storytelling. Like, it was the storytelling aspect of it. And this thought that we can't assemble through Zoom. We're assembling right now. There's a chat going on where people can be part of this. It's not in the same capacity, but it's still assembling. We're still creating something. We're still coming together. And that's where I just got so angry at him. I couldn't even help it. And I just thought, shame on you for making some people feel bad that this is the outlet they feel like they need to go, or the route they need to go down to feel whole again. And I just thought that was just really kind of crappy of him. I mean, yeah. So, yeah. In a nutshell.
We agree.
There's just so much. I get this every now and then. Like when I speak to a Caucasian person about Latinx art, because a lot of times what they'll do is they'll say, like, oh, structurally it was a little off for me, or I didn't quite understand why they did XYZ. And that, to me, they don't talk about Caucasian plays that way. They suddenly put Latinx plays under this microscope as though it's supposed to fit into this ideal situation or ideal structure. And that's not true, because we've got so many genres that we could, mix and match and make it. And so what I started to realize was that it really comes down to the lens they're looking at it in. And the fact that they are okay stepping in the shoes of this, Caucasian writer or these Caucasian characters. But the moment that it comes down to these brown characters, and you don't quite understand why this play revolves around a kitchen table instead of a living room, or you don't understand why there's this element of magical realism in it, it's because that's within us. It's our culture. It's part of us. And so it becomes this whole conversation about lens, just how you choose to look through things. And even the way the world is right now, what we're going through in the United States, it gets me even more, because it takes no effort at all to just change your lens.
Yeah.
Just look at it differently, and you can see it.
Yeah, they're very, they're used to seeing their stories. They're used to feeling like they're inside their house. We're asking them to not be in their house. We're asking them to maybe even look through a window of, and so, yeah, that's going to feel uncomfortable. That's going to feel different. And that doesn't mean they're not going to connect with those stories. They're going to find other things that are universal to everyone. It's just through a different lens. It's through a different culture, through a different way of living. And that's okay if not everything hits, not everything makes sense. That, that's part of the experience. And so that's what we try to promote. That's we try to, one of our biggest things when we explain what is Latinx theater is, look, we are telling stories through the lens of Latinos, Latinx population. I'm like, but that doesn't mean, I was like, look who surrounds us. I was like, it's not just a Latino community. That very much always encompasses the Black community, the Asian community. If you live in Houston, it encompasses a big range of cultures colliding, coming together. And those are the stories we want to tell, how those cultures and how we come together as friends, as neighbors, as family. And so you find all of that in our stories. And so that's what we want to celebrate.
Definitely.
There's so much beauty in that there's so much beauty when you can just kind of draw or break down the walls or take down the borders and just kind of exist, amongst each other. There's beauty in that, because what you also find is that there are so many similarities amongst us as well. And that's something that I talk about too, is like, I feel like sometimes certain people, certain scholars, academics, reviewers, when looking at the work we make or the work we produce, and that goes for theatrics, but that goes for like other Latinx companies or BIPOC companies. What happens is that it starts to, when they start to review us and they start to comment on that, it starts to make it seem as though we don't experience loss, we don't experience heartbreak or love, or we can't have those things because we can't possibly understand what that means. And the truth is exactly what you were saying, is that when these communities come together, we realize there's so much similarity among them, and that our story is kind of their story, and there's just beauty in that. And that's, I just think that there's room for that. There's so much room to create and to tell these stories and to share. I feel like sometimes people think that it's the same way, in the same way when we think about like government or whatever, it's this part of a pie, and if you do something, you'll have less of the pie. I think people think of that as theater too. And yes, we deal with, money and grants and things like that, but there shouldn't be a shortage of sharing stories. There shouldn't be a shortage of creating as much as we can, or inspiring or encouraging young artists to kind of find their way and find their voice. There's just beauty in that. And so I think sometimes we get this kind of like headbutting kind of motion from, other sources around us, because they feel like they're losing a piece of the pie by us telling our stories. And they really, truly aren't. If anything,
share our pie with them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We would share with them, or
it's a different mentality.
Yes, yes. Or we flavor it a little differently,
Sprinkle it on top.
Yes. So yeah, I've been finding that more and more with my research and stuff, is just that there shouldn't be any gatekeeping with the art we create, and there shouldn't be any policing with it. And what's wrong with sharing stories and elevating, the people around us, no matter what color they are? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Laura, thank you so much. That is very well said. One more question. Do you think Zoom can be theatrical? With all that being said? Both.
Do you want to go, Benito?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Laura. I think there are some theatrical components of it. I don't think it takes the place of us sitting in a room and watching something happen on stage. Of course it can't. But there is some theatrical or theatricality to it. Us meeting in the same room and reading a play together on Zoom. Us being in the chat together. Us even going down to the components of as artists. So with this reading that you guys are, it's not reading, with the balcony series, I believe the actors did character analysis, and, the director had to plan exactly the way a director does. Production there were maybe not the same production components, but I watched the video of the episode y'all shared today, and there was a whole section about Elissa up on the balcony and people talking about lighting. And so there were production elements of it. There was, so it's not in the traditional sense that we all know, but there is theatricality to it, and there is value to that. We're still growing as artists, and our audience is still experiencing it as well. So to say that there's to say that it's not theater, yes, it does kind of, blend this film theater thing together, but I still feel as though if the artist can get something out of it, if the audience can get something out of it, if we're coming together to experience it, if we're telling it down to the core, telling a story and sharing it, it's theater.
Absolutely. This whole thing was made to find out for theatrics specifically, but to share this with everyone about how do we find theatricality in this platform, because we're unsure how long we're going to be in this situation. And we, like you said, we don't want to stop creating. We want to keep connecting with our neighbors, with our friends, our families, our audiences, and so why not explore these? We would have never thought about doing a project like this if it wasn't for this situation. And so that opens up my mind. I'm like, we're too close-minded. There's way more things to experiment. And while I agree with you that this will never replace theater, it will, however, give avenues to people who don't have locations to present, right? There's not everyone, like, we're very new, we're very young, we're limited budget, and we don't have a building. Maybe we have to reach out to resources like this. Second, let's say we do get a building and we do theater. How wonderful is to use this to tell the backstory, to tell what the actors are going through, what the production staff is going through. There is a way that this can become part of what we do, and that's what we're exploring. That's what we're like, what can we do with this platform that's available to us? And that's what this whole project has been about. And so I hope people get something out of this. And I know we have grown as artists, as storytellers, and the best, which is the balcony scene, is yet to come. So I'm really looking forward to everyone seeing that.
No, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I think things will return to some normalcy eventually, but I don't think this kind of platform is going to go away. I think we're going to be doing this. The people, artists are finding ways to reach out. They're playing with it. Zoom is changing every week. There's a new feature. There's something. It's going to be. We don't know how long it's going to last, but I agree with you 100%. This is going to be here to stay. This is a new medium. It's a new platform, and people are going to be playing around and seeing the boundaries they can push with it to create their art. So 100%.
And I agree with this whole showing behind the scenes. This is beautiful. It is a great thing that actors, the audience gets to experience this, and especially the audience. They get to go through this experience and this journey with the whole production team, which is beautiful. So this is amazing, amazing work. Well, I think that's it for today. Laura, thank you so much. Benito, thank you so much for joining us today, and to all of you guys. So before I end, so this project is funded in part by the City of Houston through Houston Arts Alliance. However, it only covers parts of the cost, and we are grateful for that. A donation today will go to our artists working behind the scenes to create this whole web series. So please, please, please donate to www.theatrics.org and join us tomorrow for episode 4, Shakespeare and Love, featuring David Derringer, Ashley Parra, and Haiti Schmidt. Thank you guys. Bye. See you tomorrow.